Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are very pleased to have everyone join us today and have an opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're doing, what we've been planning. I'll share my screen, so, oops, maybe I won't. So you can kind of get an idea of how we're conceptualizing this whole project. And I will do, I think each one of us should really be responsible with introducing ourselves because we're going to kind of go in sequence. But let me do the official share. And then I think we're good to go. Okay. So, hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Fisher. I'm Associate Professor of History at the College of New Jersey. You can read all of that on the opening for the conference, the webpage where they put all our tiny bios. I'm really pleased to be here with my colleagues. We're all working with Rutgers University Press to talk about a series that we started called Series. And I know that is probably, you probably have questions about sort of what's the deal with that name, where did it come from? Because it might seem a bit of an odd name for all of you, but particularly since it has this sort of homophonic dimension to it that makes it seem either ironic or meta, you know, a series named Series. But of course, there's a difference in the spelling that, you know, might leave you wondering even more. Clearly, it's more than a cheeky play on words. But the question is, how do we come up with this name? And what are we trying to capture? Well, for that, I would say, blame it on Pete Mickulas, who's going to come later. When in doubt, that's my motto, blame it on Pete, his sneaky genius. Of course, Series refers to the state seal of New Jersey, which of course references to the right, the Roman god of abundance, sustenance, and maternal nurturing. It's also, if you look it up, a dwarf planet, just in case you were wondering. But of course, symbolism matters. But in this case, in the case of Series, it's also vital to capturing the enormity of our vision. And our vision, of course, is to reclaim New Jersey's history and hence its story, to recognize the wealth of scholarship being done on New Jersey, much of which is happening among scholars within the state, to signal to scholars and prospective scholars writing about New Jersey history that they have a home within the state at New Jersey's flagship state academic press, Rutgers University Press, and to promote New Jersey's significance. And this is sort of how the whole idea sort of came about back in August of 2020, to promote New Jersey's significance in shaping regional, national, and even international conditions. Ceres, the Roman goddess of abundance and maternal nurturing, is a great way, we think, to capture all those ambitions, but also to distinguish what we're seeking to do at Rutgers University Press. Now, we can talk more about each aspect of the goals of Series as a series, but I want to stress the importance of New Jersey's flagship state academic press spearheading the stories that are told about New Jersey. To me, as someone who studies America's place in the world and the thorny question of people left out of US hegemony for the sake of promoting a sanitized story, the trend in publication about New Jersey, about our state, speaks to the question of agency and self-determination. It's one of the reasons why I was excited to be a part of the series. As each of us knows, those who control how things are remembered, those who write the story, are also the ones who shape what that story means. In New Jersey's case, that has meant that our story has been dominated by states that surround our borders. And since those states are primarily interested in promoting their own state's role in shaping America's national history, they've relegated New Jersey to an auxiliary role in the development of the US. In those cases, New Jersey is only meaningful for what it did for the revolutionaries for New England or the Chesapeake region, those people who carried out the War for Independence and who instituted the experiment in democracy, or it's meaningful for the proto-capitalists who set up factories in Pennsylvania and New York, but never really on its own. Explained rather as such, New Jersey is less of a place with its own history and more of a pathway to more interesting things. And almost every story we hear about New Jersey, right, talks about New Jersey as this place that you pass through, as something, as a place that aids other places with questionable significance on its own. Because of that, New Jersey is framed by an endless list of its idiosyncrasies that focus on its oddities or its status as a tourist destination. That's a nice way of putting it. A different, more accurate statement might be that New Jersey is mocked as being a kind of historical void. Series wants to change that by giving New Jersey a place to be self-determinate. Our goal is to do that by publishing histories that locate New Jersey's role in shaping national and even international conversations about the economy, about social development, innovation, politics, cultural contact and negotiation, which of course is a big theme of today's conference, and all the other facets that are meaningful in the modern world. Series, and this is a connection between the symbolism of the state seal and what we are trying to do, wants to tap into the abundance of stories and scholarship already in progress that speak to the enormity of New Jersey's place in America and the world. And I'm delighted that Rutgers University Press has been so willing, and this is another series sort of symbolic connection to me, to nurture this endeavor. That's what I wanted to open with, just to say this is why we're doing this. This is how we're trying to welcome people in. This is the way we're trying to enlarge the story about New Jersey, reclaim it even. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Lucia.
Thank you so much, Chris. What I want to do in my time is to just sort of very briefly, because we want to get to your questions and stuff, is just sort of go over how these ideas and gaps that Chris was just referring to have revealed themselves in the historiography of colonial and early national America, which are my areas of scholarly specializations. I also have some slides to show, so let me get in there now. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing my screen now. Great. As Chris said, we are so delighted to be the co-editors of series, this new series in New Jersey Studies. And I just want to pick up on that point that Chris just made about New Jersey being the place you pass through, right? Because I just was presenting at a grant last week and came across this map that from 1777 that actually refers to New Jersey as, quote, the country between New York and Philadelphia, right? So, it was just like such a visceral, visual illustration of some of the themes that Chris and Pete and I have been talking about as we've been planning this series, right? So you can see, even in this map, New Jersey is not identified as New Jersey. It's identified as a place that people pass through, right? A place that helps the Continental troops in this instance specifically get from New York and Philadelphia, right? And so I just thought that would be like a really kind of fun illustration or map to sort of start my presentation, because it's just a sort of playful way of illustrating some of the ways in which we would like to change the historiography about how New Jersey gets remembered and what stories get told and how, right? So I just want to very briefly kind of talk about this from a historiographical point of view. Chris and Pete and I, we all knew each other from graduate school, from our Rutgers day, right? And when we were taught the history of colonial America, it was taught as, we were taught those New England studies, right? All of those studies that came out about this New England town and that New England town. Our own Phil Grevin, who was on the faculty of colonial America at Rutgers at the time, was one of these New England scholars. And then we would be taught about, Virginia, the Chesapeake, the development of slavery in that region. And these were sort of the two points on the map, that were also the touch points for the historiography. But of course, New Jersey and the colonial American story of New Jersey is sort of right in the center of those two places, right? And played such pivotal and important roles in our colonial history. Now, I don't want to overstate, the ignoring of it. Obviously, there's been a lot of great work, right? But in terms of how it's often taught in these, graduate seminars, or even in, typical maybe K through 12, there's only a certain amount of time to think about colonial America. So we tend to talk about, the Pilgrims and Jamestown, right? And, leave out that middle space. And we're really hoping that series can help produce tremendous scholarship that will make it impossible to ignore, New Jersey's place. I don't want to, spend a lot of time thinking about what has been done by other presses, right? Because the goal is to think about what we can do as a press, right? But for the early national period, in particular, the Revolution, and with 250 revolutionary plans already underway throughout the state, we can see from the historiography of the past decade or so that there's been a real expansion of how to think about revolutionary America in ways that are expanding its geographical borders, expanding who counts as, sort of subjects, a much more inclusive storytelling, including the perspectives of women and African Americans and Indigenous people. But a lot of these stories still are not centering New Jersey, right? We do have a good exception is our own Jim Gigatino, who has published a great book on New Jersey's role in slavery and abolition in the early national period. But for the most part, as exciting and as dynamic and transformative as the field of revolutionary studies has become in terms of its more expansive and inclusive frameworks and perspectives, there is still a place to put New Jersey on the map, literally, right? To sort of extend my initial metaphor, right? And this is why I'm so excited about our series, right? We are indeed, one of the first books to be coming out as part of the series will be by Maxine Laurie, one of the most, well-respected and prolific scholars of New Jersey history, who is produced this fabulous book about revolutionary New Jersey. So we are just so thrilled to have this book as one of the first titles to come out of series, because it really is helping to put New Jersey on the map in a way that I think will be a real game changer, not just, for New Jersey studies, but within larger historiographical frameworks. And then we also have some wonderful work coming out with respect to the main theme of today's conference in terms of Indigenous voices and Native perspectives, including Jean Sutherland's work on the Lenape in colonial New Jersey. And please, I encourage you this afternoon, there is a session where Jean and Cammie Townsend will be talking about their research in these areas. So I really sort of encourage you to attend that session, because it's a way of helping to showcase the kind of innovative, wonderfully New Jersey centric stories, but that stories that also reflect upon New Jersey's larger place in both national and international frameworks. And then I just wanted to let everybody know before I turn it back over to Chris, who's sort of going to give his 20th century sort of perspective on things, is we do have a special promo code for Rutgers University Press. So thanks to Pete for his generosity here. So if you use the code that's on my screen, RNJH20, you can receive 30% off any Rutgers University Press title along with free shipping. So that's sort of our gift to you to help support Rutgers University Press, because they are doing such a great job for us in terms of promoting the series. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that I can turn it back over to Chris. And I can put that flyer back up later if people want to take a closer look at it.
Okay, thanks again, Lucia. And I'm glad you highlighted a couple of the works that we have in the pipeline, so to speak. Pretty much, that are going to reach, the public very soon. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit more, because when we envisioned series, we envisioned it as really encompassing all of them of New Jersey history, like all of it, from the very beginning all the way to the present. And of course, that creates wonderful opportunities, but it also highlights some of the challenges. We have a very rich colonial and early republic, sort of corpus of history and, archives in our state. And we're really wonderful at particularly recent scholarship, talking about Native Americans. But once you get a little bit deeper into the American story, it gets a little bit, the works get thinner. And then you end up with more sort of trade stories about New Jersey. We want to reclaim that. So one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about some of the ways we might want to conceptualize thinking about New Jersey's history and thinking about the big New Jersey history, right? The enormity of it, beyond, even the Civil War, right? Beyond, the late 19th century. And first, I want to acknowledge that there's incredible work being done at Rutgers University Press and through series that taps into some of these things. These topics, that period post 1850, has been really in the front of our minds. We've been trying to be intentional about seeking out projects that deal with those topics, and as such, we're coming up with great works that are in the pipeline that talk about, for example, the Jewish experience in the 20th century, and the way that Jewish immigrants, for example, coming to the United States in the aftermath of the Holocaust, found ways of integrating themselves both into New Jersey, but also into the post-World War II, post-Holocaust experience by doing a very New Jersey thing, right? By putting their hands in the soil and working on farms and working with livestock, and how it was not only a way to sort of share their knowledge, but also therapeutic. We have wonderful histories coming out like that. But we also want more. We want those histories that go back over some of those topics that we've seen over the years. We want to know more about the story of Italian Americans. We want to know more about the Irish, Hungarians, Polish immigrants coming to to New Jersey and the United States, and the way in which their New Jersey experience was unique, and the way in which they brought their old world talents to New Jersey, transformed New Jersey's culture, and in conversation with other groups were also transformed. We want to hear those stories. And we think that builds on the great scholarship that's already been done about the earlier immigrants who came, for example, the Irish, Germans, other groups that came from Denmark and places like that. And we already know that rich history, and the way that rich history is connected not only with building New Jersey, but also with groups that line the borders of New Jersey. For example, the strong cultural influence of the Amish on the western edge of New Jersey going into Pennsylvania. We want to share in that. We want to talk about how New Jersey helped cultivate that and the way in which New Jersey fed into that. Certainly the commerce of it, but also the cultural dimensions. So that's an open invitation for people who are working on those kind of topics to reach out to us. And I wanted to highlight a couple of other, if I had a wish list, a couple of other projects that I think fit within the spirit of series and what we envision. So I'm going to tick through a few, and just to give you a sense of what we're thinking, again, the sort of bigness, the enormity that we're thinking of the grand New Jersey history as a shaper of the dialogue about what this democracy means. So I will. If I had a wish list, one of the things that I would love to see more works on, and I certainly invite people to work on, is the role of South Asians in New Jersey history. Recently, I've been looking at incredible works that look at the early South Asians who came to the United States, and their point of entry being really one of three places, either New Orleans, but most notably New York and New Jersey. South Asians who came over on British merchant ships at the turn of the 20th century, who jumped off those ships and who landed on American shores. Now, most of the scholarship that's written about this talks about their intervention, and the scholars who write about this say that these are the earliest South Asians who really sort of come and stay and transform American culture. But South Asians who stay in New Jersey, one of the things that these merchants, these South Asian immigrants brought to the United States was their desire to peddle, what were considered exotic wares. The three places where they peddled those goods were Atlantic City, Asbury Park, and Long Branch. And the leading scholar who writes about this, again, doesn't focus on New Jersey, but I think this is fertile ground for anyone who's studying this, particularly since New Jersey now has, I think, last I checked, probably the largest population of South Asians in the United States. But the scholar who studies this focuses on their impact on New York. But a lot of those merchants stayed in New Jersey and had to sort of, navigate the peculiar racial politics and ethnic politics of New Jersey, in the progressive era, and the period before World War I. And they ended up integrating into either African American communities or going further north, integrating into the Latinx community. In fact, the leading scholar on this talks about the fact that some of the earliest influences of Islam in the African American community comes from the contact that African Americans had with the South Asian immigrants. That's a wonderful story that demonstrates this global connection to New Jersey, that talks about the cultural transformation in New Jersey, and that I think also would have resonance with a growing population in New Jersey. If I had a wish list, that would be on that wish list. Another thing that would be on that wish list, and I have an image up here of a guy named Ralston Ally, who, this picture's from around circa 1900. He becomes a vendor, a merchant in Atlantic City. And this picture is just to demonstrate that information is out there. It just needs to be mined. If I had another wish list, I would also, of course, ask for more work on Paul Robeson. There's an individual, again, with New Jersey ties, who was truly a global conversation setter. And we've had great work on it, on his life. Almost everyone sort of defaults to Martin Duberman's book. But I think with everything that we know about the globalization of America in the period after World War I, with everything we know about the Cold War and the racial politics of the Cold War, and with everything we know about the significance of New Jersey in shaping those conversations, I think there's room for a new treatment or more treatment on Paul Robeson. Another thing that might be in my wish list, and there's been some work on this, and Rutgers University, Newark, certainly is aware of this, is the influence of Tom Hayden and SDS in New Jersey social politics in the 1960s. When we think about Tom Hayden and we think about SDS as shaping the national conversation on anti-war protest and social justice and mobilizing, thousands, hundreds of thousands of college students to become more engaged citizens. We always talk about them at the sort of national level without realizing that New Jersey was pivotal in that. A lot of Tom Hayden's work happened in Newark. And I think that that's fertile ground for us to sort of capture that part of the national conversation that we know was so transformative in the United States in the middle of the 20th century, and the legacies of which we're still dealing with. I think that that could be a wonderful place for, if I had a wish list, for someone to go out and write more about that history, and write about the problems with the activism and the organization that was going on in Newark at the time, and the way in which that connected to what was going on in Philadelphia and going on in New York, which also connected to Chicago. I think it would be marvelous. A few more that I think would be useful. I sort of intimated one of the other sort of items that I would love to see more work on. And Rutgers University Press has been great about this. We actually have something in a pipeline, but I'd love to see more on the Latinx community, which is diverse and has many interesting dynamics, from, of course, Puerto Rican migrants who come to New Jersey to work on farms in the middle of the 20th century, and who then become instrumental in shaping the culture of places like Camden and Newark and even the Jersey Shore, to, of course, newer Latinx communities, like, for example, Dominicans and Central American communities, and even South American communities. As a little nod to my hometown, Long Branch, one of the things that's amazed me, and I'd love to know more about the history, are the number of Brazilians who are in New Jersey and who are becoming an important cultural and political voice in New Jersey. Again, I think that topic of Latinx, the Latinx community in New Jersey, is just begging to have much more scholarship about, because again, it has all those national and international connections. Just a few more, and then I'll turn it back over to my colleagues. One of the items that, again, is a little bit dear to me as someone who grew up in Long Branch is the role of writers in New Jersey, writers who became prominent in shaping the national discourse, particularly after World War II. And one writer in particular, who I think really does deserve some treatment, some consideration, is Norman Mailer. Now, of course, Norman Mailer is known for his connection to New York, and known, of course, for the work he did in helping to establish the Village Voice. But his real origins actually begins in New Jersey, where he was born in 1923, and where his family, who owned the Scottsboro Hotel in Long Branch, where his family brought him for most of the summers of his life until the hotel burned down in 1941, and where he wrote some of his early works were sort of written right in New Jersey, right in Long Branch. And I'm curious to know how much of that New Jersey flair was written into his work, and how he negotiated his relationship with his family and the Jewish community, and what that tells us about being a New Jerseyan in the 1930s and the 1940s, and how the Jewish community integrated itself into the larger social fabric of New Jersey. There's so much more to write about with New Jersey. Literally, this is scratching the surface. Presently, I'm working on a project that reconceptualizes the significance of New Jersey in the life of Woodrow Wilson. Again, I think it has all those connections that I think will be relevant and useful, and also interesting. I mean, that's the other thing. New Jersey is such a unique place that it's interesting in and of itself. So again, if I had a wish list, these are some of the things that would be on it, but I'm sure there are people in the audience who have projects or ideas, and I really encourage you to explore them and maybe reach out to us to see how we can help you. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Pete and Melissa. There's Melissa.
I think Melissa is going to go first and tell us about New Jersey studies, and then we'll talk about Rutgers Press submissions. So Melissa, thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Pete. So hello, everybody. My name is Melissa Ziobro. I'm the Specialist Professor of Public History at Monmouth University. I would like to thank my esteemed co-presenters for having me today, because I am not with the series, although I was dying to say that. I am actually the editor for New Jersey Studies, an interdisciplinary journal. And I'm here today because, as we all know, a lot of very fine book projects start off as a journal article. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit about New Jersey Studies, just in case you're not familiar. In 2015, the New Jersey Historical Commission, in partnership with Rutgers University Libraries and Monmouth University, launched a new peer-reviewed journal that publishes original scholarship on all aspects of New Jersey studies, grounded in historical context. We strongly encourage submissions that help to tell the stories of people, groups, places, and events commonly excluded from the dominant historical narratives, or that give new perspectives on familiar stories. New Jersey Studies is available free of charge, online only. I can't stress how proud I am that this is open access, right? There's never any fees to read New Jersey Studies. There are no fees to publish with us ever. The journal is published twice annually in both the winter and the summer. Contents include traditional peer-reviewed articles, invited talks, featured archival documents and artifacts, teachers' guides, book and exhibit reviews. We also publish select New Jersey Studies Academic Alliance award-winning student papers. So there's really something for everyone in New Jersey Studies. We have published known leaders in the field. Of course, we were hailing Maxine Laurie earlier, right? So we are publishing known leaders like Maxine, but we're also publishing the work of emerging scholars, right? Everybody who gets through the peer review process fair and square, which I know we're going to talk more about in a moment. Metrics show that to date, the journal is being read by thousands across the globe, to include places like China, Germany, Egypt, India, Malaysia. When I saw these statistics, I had to ask my tech support at Rutgers University Libraries, are you sure? But I shouldn't be surprised because, as Chris just noted, there are so many interesting stories to be told about our great state. The journal is going to release its 14th issue. This winter issue will be out in January. It's our 14th. To date, I've been the sole editor of the journal, and I also have Dr. Jonathan Mercantini of Kean University serving as the reviews editor. So he's immensely helpful, and I appreciate Dr. Mercantini's support. Our editorial board consists of respected scholars from institutions across the state. I would like to just very briefly share my screen and show you our web page in case anyone is not familiar. This is always the tricky part, right? So you should be able to see my screen right now. One of my co-presenters, please shout out if not. So you can see, you can find us, as I said, online, open access all the time. When you come to the homepage, you will see our current issue, right? So the summer issue is up there right now. As you click on an article title, you'll get the abstract, and then you can download the PDF. You can also go back and read all of our archives right here. It's all of our past issues, and there's also a wonderful search functionality, right? We are cross-referenced in databases like EBSCO also. So go ahead and show you. If you are interested in submitting to New Jersey Studies, and I hope you are, you can just go to the submissions tab and it'll walk you through the process of how to get your submission to me and ultimately get it out for peer review. So I will stop sharing and turn it over to Pete, as I believe we're going to dive into the nuts and bolts of the peer review process.
Great, thank you very much. Hang on, give me a second. Great. Thanks, everybody. So one of the key things that I wanted to follow up, I think Chris's talk was obviously a great introduction, putting together a wish list for things that we would love to include in the series. And Lucia's point about the books that are in the pipeline, and we're very proud of, and they should be out in 2022. Is how do you go about doing that? How do you join us? I mean, Chris issued an open invitation, and this is a sincere invitation. We know this is, many of you listening are our constituents, and we'd love to have, we'd love to work with you. But how do you do it? The easiest thing to do is to reach out to one of us. Our emails are on the flyer that Lucia circulated and threw up on the screen earlier. But at the same time, feel free to reach out to me directly because I sort of coordinate the proposals and submissions and so forth. And I just wanted to take some time before we get to questions to talk to you about what that process entails. And it's pretty basic. Those of you who have published with university presses before, many of you have published with us, I'm sure, or with other presses. It's not mysterious. It's not that hidden. At least I hope it's not. And if you have questions during the process, please feel free to reach out to me. But say you have a topic, it could be one of Chris's wonderful wish list topics. It could be something else that we think is potentially appropriate. Reach out to me, to Chris, to Lucia. If it's an article length project, reach out to Melissa, and let us know. I'm happy to sort of preliminarily talk you through it and then share with you what our proposal guidelines look like. And the proposal guidelines, I have a set of proposal guidelines that are, as Melissa's, submission portal was, it's designed to walk you through the process of submitting to us a book project, an appropriate project for us. And what does that project look like? Well, in order to go out to external readers, which is what we do at Rutgers Press, we have to have enough material to evaluate. And what that really consists of, at a minimum, would be a fully fleshed out proposal. And the proposal should begin by telling us what is the project about in 3 to 4 to 5 maybe pages. Give us a great overview of what the project is, its importance. Talk about your audience. Talk about potentially the market. What other published works are you going to be in conversation with? What else has been published previous to what you're planning to do? If you are, for instance, a recent graduate student, and suppose, as often many of my authors at Rutgers Press are, revising a doctoral dissertation for a wider audience of publication, realize that you are going to be converting that dissertation into a book. And those are very different products, right? The dissertation is, as we know, or as I like to call it, the world's longest take-home exam. It takes you quite a bit of time to finish. And at the end, if you're lucky, you'll have 4 or 5 people read it. And that's terrific. And what we want to do with a book is something very different, obviously. And so often I say to those of you who are listening who are academics, think about how you might want to teach undergraduates with that same dissertation, and think about them, think about the classroom setting that you're teaching in, and think about what you would do to turn your scholarship into something that you can use usefully in the classroom. What does that look like? How does the language change? It's not a dumbing down in any way, shape, or form, but it's a way to make something very accessible while not losing its scholarly rigor. So that's sort of one model here. Of course, Chris alluded to some other books as well, trade books, which we're also, of course, very interested in. And my predecessor, the longtime wonderful director of Rutgers Press, Marley Wasserman, built over her tenure here a wonderful, deep, and broad list in New Jersey studies over time. And I've been privileged to, follow in her very big shoes, although she has very small feet, she's a small person, those of you who know her. So we want to build on this. And so there's a great core of work here. So the proposal has to really put forward your argument. And what else should accompany the proposal? Well, at this stage, I think what we're looking for here is a minimum of 2 really polished sample chapters at a minimum of the proposed book. And with a proposal, and the proposal, by the way, should make up for what's sort of missing, the chapters that you don't submit that haven't perhaps been fully drafted yet. But the proposal and the sample chapters should be putting your best foot forward, your best work, very polished and sort of ready for prime time. And by prime time, of course, I mean peer reviewers. What I'll do next, if we agree that this is something that's appropriate for the scope and the subject matter of the series, I'll probably confer with Chris and Lucia about a potential book project. I definitely will, in fact. And we'll talk about we'll talk about how it's going to fit in the series, but we'll also talk about who potential readers are going to be. And we have a great network of New Jersey historians, of course, and others outside our immediate community. And we would, recruit people from there. We'd give them a commensurate amount of time to review the work, usually 5 or 6 weeks to turn a report around. And I know I'm getting into some very nuts and bolts details here, so I won't go into too much depth. But and what we hope for when peer review works, those of you know, it's a great opportunity to get your work in front of other people, other qualified people in your academic community or beyond, and to have them pay really close attention to your work and to help you edit it, revise it, and have them pay attention to your work in a way that probably no one has in such detail with such attention since you were in school. And it's all happening happily for you on Rutgers Press's dime. So I will be paying the peer reviewers. I will wait. I'll get 2 reports back. I will look at them usually first, share them with our series editors. Sometimes there may appear to be discrepancies. There may be some reconciling of disparate viewpoints among readers. But ideally, in this ideal case scenario for peer review that I'm outlining for you here, what we would do would have you get a chance, you the author, get a chance to review the reports, take your time, and respond to us in a brief memo in writing to say how you would, anticipate, responding to the critiques in the report, what you agree with, and it's also appropriate at this stage to say, perhaps I think reader number 2 didn't quite understand my argument. I'll clarify something in chapter 3, or it's perfectly appropriate to say, this is not the book that I'm looking to write for these reasons, and I think somebody may have misapprehended what I was saying. So that's the basic process. Once I have your response as an editor here at the University Press, I take your work, I become your internal advocate with our committee, our committees. We have a number of committees that have to approve all of the work that we publish. Of course, it's a somewhat drawn out process, but actually we try to make it as quick and painless as possible to the extent that is possible. And from there, with a successful peer review or set of peer reviews under your belt, I can present your work for consideration for a book contract. And then there are all sorts of processes to go through after that, what that entails. And that's probably the subject of another panel, maybe if the Historical Commission will have us again in the future. I wanted to see if there are questions, perhaps. Where are we? I think we're after 1 o'clock. So let's maybe talk to Greer. Greer, are you there?
I am. I'm going to be a hovering voice and not
Okay.
turn my camera on here. Folks, feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box as we go along here. So we I think this is more so for you, Pete. There was a question in the Q&A about using the promo code. So I think that might be something, you can answer one-on-one from Sam Stevens there, but Sam, we'll get that sorted out.
Sure.
But here's a great question for everyone. Do you ever look at fiction in a historical context?
I will jump on that immediately so that we're all of one voice. The press does not currently publish fiction. Sorry. There are some university presses out there, and if people are interested, I can share with you. There are some university presses publishing both poetry and fiction. We're not one of them. It's not part of the scope of work that we do.
Great, thank you. Can you discuss expectations for compensation? With the understanding that some of these opportunities are unpaid, but what do potential writers need to know before devoting the time to prepare a proposal or write an article?
I guess you're looking at me. Why don't I jump in? Rutgers University Press, like all university presses, is a not-for-profit. The only real compensation that we're generally able to offer our writers is royalties against sales, against net sales, most frequently. Occasionally, if we were to commission a book, I'm looking around in my office for examples. That was a special book. For instance, we did just do, getting back to Chris's point about Paul Robeson, we did a graphic biography of Paul Robeson in a year and a half ago that we published. And we had to commission the artwork with a known comic artist. And I encourage you to check it out. And that's an unusual thing where that's a work for hire. In general, authors are not paid a salary. The only compensation would be free books and royalties. So if you're looking for that sort of arrangement, you might be thinking of a trade book. I can help you perhaps even find a literary agent. I'm happy, again, throw my email up there if you would. I'm happy to field questions that get more and more specific as they come up.
Great. Well, I have a question. For emerging scholars or graduate students kind of on the precipice of getting ready to consider publishing their work, what advice do you have? And as academics and people in the business yourself, for those folks who are, again, kind of on the precipice of publishing?
I'll chime in, and I'm sure everybody has thoughts on that. But one of the things I try to stress to our emerging scholars is that while the peer review process might seem like an attack, it's certainly not. You know, people labor so long and so hard on their work, and they're so proud of it. And then they submit it and they get pages and pages of feedback sometimes, and they're immediately overwhelmed. Some people get really upset. But something I always try to tell our emerging scholars in particular is that the peer review process, at least for New Jersey studies, is completely blind. So the reviewers have no idea who you are. They don't know that you're an emerging scholar. They're not, grading you essentially more harshly because of that. And you would be shocked that some of the leading scholars in our field get incredibly robust feedback also. Their work doesn't magically sail through the peer review process. So, I would just love to stress that. Please don't feel overwhelmed or distressed by the peer review process. It's there to make us all better in the end, and 99% of the time it does. So.
You go ahead, Chris, then I'll go.
Yeah, I would add to what Melissa said. The feedback you get can be dispiriting, but think about it in holistically. When you get pages of feedback, that means someone who's really knowledgeable in the field sat down for many hours and paid really close attention to you. And it might hurt, but if you wade through that, you'll get to some real nuggets. One of which might be exactly what Pete said, that they didn't get what you were writing. And then you got to ask yourself the question, why? Either they read it with a different set of eyes, with their own intentions, or maybe you weren't as clear with your thesis. And that's valuable to know. But what I really wanted to highlight is, I wouldn't wait until you have the perfect project. I would begin talking to Pete and to us when you're thinking about this project. If you wait until the very end, and it's a long process, as Pete pointed out, you invest so much of it up front, expecting it to just be a home run, and it's a process. It may take a while. You'll need to get feedback. Some of the feedback may not be what you want to hear. You want to start as early as possible, so that way you know that you're, that the process is ongoing and that it's not an all or nothing endeavor. So that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, I agree with Melissa and Chris, and kind of being open to things that at first might make you bristle. Like I remember when a book that had came up a while ago, but when I first sent it out, the reviewer actually asked for an entire new chapter. And at first I was like, I don't want to write a whole new chapter, but it turned out like the book needed that chapter, and it made it so much stronger. And and I actually after the fact found out who the reviewer was, and we got to have a great chat about like I was like I wasn't happy at first, but I'm like so grateful. But so the only other thing I would also add is it's a good idea to show your work to someone else, not someone who does like the exact same stuff as you, right? Because then they're going to read it through the same specialized lens as you, but maybe a colleague or a friend who knows something about what you're interested in, but isn't as much of a specialist, because then they can maybe help you identify, is your argument clear? Are you getting your main points across to that non-specialist, right? Because that's a really good sign about the clarity of your writing. So that, I did that with a couple of chapters, and it was just so useful to get, a strong, but like not complete expert, opinion on my work, because, they were able to say, oh yeah, this makes sense, or why should I care about X, and then I had to sort of explain why X was important, and that made the work stronger.
Great point.
Thank you. Another question that came in, has RU Press ever considered collaborating, or may have you already collaborated with Native American communities looking to publish materials salient for revitalization practices? I'm thinking particularly about language materials or histories created by the communities themselves.
That sounds like a great opportunity. I'd be open to definitely hearing more about that in more detail for sure. I think a lot of the backlist of Rutgers Press, and we go back to 1936 when it was first founded, and there are some what you would call, classics in Native American Indigenous studies, but they are like, as we said, on the backlist. So there are more traditional scholarship as opposed to community-based research. So I also urge you, as somebody was kind enough to do earlier, to see our panel this afternoon with Cami Townsend from the history department here and Jean Sutherland from Lehigh University, who will be talking about their own research on the Lenape. So yeah, again, email, please. All of my contact information should be available. So I'm open to any entreaties like that.
Great. How would this work for copyright registrations and retail sales, such as Barnes and Noble and so on? And I think that question might be for you, Pete.
Greer, is that the sum total of the text of the question? Because I guess we can't. There's nobody here to actually have a face-to-face with. I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question is what I'm saying. I think if what the questioner wants to know is, are our books available across the spectrum of retail outlets, the answer is yes. I'm sitting here right above the Rutgers Barnes and Noble, and we have a whole, any number of books on display downstairs. Our books are available on Amazon and anywhere you can purchase books. Copyright is intellectual property. There's a lot of nuances there that I can't go into right now, but copyright is generally registered in the author's name unless there is an exception for some reason. And all the rights that authors retain versus what we as publisher retain is all explicitly spelled out in our 9 very detailed single-space page contracts. So if there's any more specific questions, again, I know this seems like a cop-out, but please feel free to reach out to me by email.
I saw a comment earlier from, I think it was from Jonathan Mercantini, just saying how wonderful Dr. McMahon and Dr. Fisher, your kind of discussion of what could be published, the wish list, if that could become, a document or a project in of itself. So I wanted to ask for everybody, Melissa and Pete as well, if you have any other additional kind of thoughts on topics in New Jersey history that you'd like to add that you didn't get to in your presentation that you think would be worthy of a book.
Melissa, what do you think?
For New Jersey studies, I mean, I'm wide open. If you look at any given issue, we are publishing from the colonial period to, the 21st century. So we are wide open at all times. And we haven't really gone out and recruited extensively on different topics because we've just had a steady flow of submissions. So if you've got it and it's related to New Jersey, send it our way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, one of the things, we are hoping to do is to create scholarship that is inclusive and expansive as possible, right? So we want to hear from all voices, particularly, perhaps communities and studies that had previously been, underrepresented or marginalized in the historical record.
Yeah, and I just wanted to note that I really appreciated Jonathan's question. I actually answered in the text because it speaks to what we were, if you look at the flyer's just so much on it. We were really trying to capture, one, because we were so excited about the project, we were trying to capture what the sort of spirit of this series is, but also some of the kind of topics that we would really like to see. We can't capture everything. So if what's on the flyer isn't sufficient, then just let us know and we'll do everything in our power to make, to give, even more, sort of insight into what we would like to see.
Right.
Right. I remember when we first announced the series and we sent the flyer out, and I think we got like an email saying, but you didn't say this. And it's like, did you see the flyer? It's like, 8-point font, we're trying to make it fit on one page, so it, very much it is like, many flowers blooming kind of thing. So, and I wonder if I can even like I put the flyer in my slideshow, but it was even hard to visually see. So I wonder if we could somehow get a copy of it to people who attended the session, or, you can, I think it's on the Rutgers website, right? So.
Yes, it is available on the website.
Yeah, we can, this is Greer again, we can definitely send that out to conference attendees. I think Pete actually sent me the flyer last night, so we'll make sure to do that. There's a couple very specific questions up next. So I think this is more of a question, but also a note. Why do academics still pluralize lenape with an S, and how will we standardize the spelling? And I'm not sure if the crew here knows the answer to that, but just one that I wanted to share.
I'll jump in only because I'm publishing a book by Gene Sutherland, one of the respected historians and authorities who helping us launch our series. Again, I'll just plug it and say attend her session this afternoon at 3. That is, she will share, we just designed the cover, and that's right, the lenape is pluralized. And I am deferring to Dr. Sutherland and her scholarship in this case. I'm not equipped, really, I'm sorry, to address that in any detail, what the standards are in that case, except for that I'm deferring to my author in this instance. I don't know if anyone else can add anything to that.
I would just say plug your 3 o'clock panel, because I'm sure that both Cami and Jean can to speak to that. So yeah. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And another specific question, or a little bit earlier, Dr. Fisher, you spoke of Paul Robeson. And there's a question here about pronouncing his name. Apparently there are people in certain parts of the state that pronounce it Robeson. I hope I'm getting that pronunciation correct there. So I wondered if you could comment a little bit on that.
It sounds to me like there's a book to be written about New Jersey folkways, or at least an article to be written about New Jersey folkways, because I teach at the College of New Jersey, and we get students from either Trenton or Newark. And this is just the way that, these sort of linguistic terms, these idiosyncrasies just sort of play out. But I noticed that, my students from Trenton pronounce it Trenton. And the students from Newark pronounce it Newark. They just leave part of it out. Maybe, speaking of Philip Grevin, maybe we could see someone write something that talks about the interesting folkways and linguistic patterns in New Jersey, and how it's a reflection of really the creolization of the people who are migrating into New Jersey, and how, in North Jersey, they're intersecting with and connecting with certain kinds of immigrants that are coming from different parts of the world and different parts of the U.S. And the same thing is happening in Trenton and Camden. So I don't have an answer for that, but that's an invitation to explore it further.
And just in the shameless plug department, one more look at the Paul Robeson graphic biography recently published. You can find it on our website, 30% off. Thanks for indulging me.
That's awesome, thank you. So we don't have any, we might have one more question coming through. It was the same person who asked that question, says, when I'm in Newark, I always say Robeson. So thank you for answering that. So we have about, a little under 10 minutes left here. So I guess I'll pass it back to you, panelists, in terms of, sharing final thoughts or any questions you may have for each other before we close out the session today.
Well, I just want to say I'm so grateful for giving us the space for this panel. We're so excited about launching series, and so to be able to share the work that we're doing with the New Jersey historical community is so important and valuable. And also, I think there's great synergy between our book series and the work that Melissa's doing with the journal, right? Because so many journal articles sort of, become books, right? And so it's a great way to to test out ideas and get some initial feedback, and then allow you to sort of think about, how the project could grow and evolve. So really just grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that and really echo the significance of the work that's being done by Melissa and New Jersey Studies. I spent 6 years on the editorial board. They're wonderful years. I learned a lot. And if you want to learn about really the sort of wild and interesting dimensions of New Jersey history, read New Jersey Studies. You'll learn as much as you can about, the Jersey Devil. There's one.
Our top read article ever, Chris.
But also that New Jersey has a state microbe. Am I right about that?
You are
so. Yeah. So
truly interdisciplinary.
Yes. So, but really, and I think it speaks to, again, the sophistication and the complexity of all the things that are happening in New Jersey. We need to make that bigger. We need to announce that to the rest of the country and the world. And that's certainly what we're trying to do in series.
Well, thank you for your kind words, and thank you to all of you for including me in today's panel. It's an honor to shepherd this work through the process and then get it out there for the world to see. And if I'd make just one other note, it's to please consider assigning some of this work in your classes. We have a lot of educators on here. Again, the fact that this is all open access makes it particularly accessible for students who are always concerned about fees and such. So, consider the work not just for your own publications, but as far as your classroom assignments too.
I should say I'm a regular reader of New Jersey Studies. I'm always prospecting the table of contents and the PDFs for potential book-length projects. So you should not consider them mutually exclusive. You can consider a journal publication and then expanding your project if appropriate and you so desire into a book-length project that we would love to consider.
That's a great point, Pete. They have to submit 2 chapters to you, right, anyway. And so as you force yourself to get into that writing process, New Jersey Studies could be a potential stopping off point. So I appreciate that you note that you need not choose one or the other.
That's right. But I do encourage people who are considering a new project or have a project that's, at any stage of completion right now to reach out, and we'll be happy to confer with you. And we'll also be frank if we don't think it fits, if for some reason, and oftentimes, and I get, as you might imagine, my job is to take in many, and I don't just do history, I do social sciences as well for Rutgers Press. And we can get inundated. It's a nice problem to have, inundated with submissions from very, very qualified people writing about an enormous amount of interesting things. And if I send something away, it's oftentimes not because of its quality, but because it's not the exact fit. And Rutgers Press, like any other university press, specializes in certain fields, from anthropology, sociology, history of the region, film studies, and others. And you'll have other presses, and I'll try to help you find them if that turns out to be necessary. If you're writing on something that is much more, Pennsylvania focused, I can help you reach the people at Penn or at Penn State University Press, or any number, or Temple University Press. I mean, there are many of our sister presses out there who, cultivate expansive lists in regional history. So happy to connect you with the people if necessary.
Right, and here, I guess I'm going to give a little shout out to Pete here, because I think one of the things he does that's so valuable is just sort of like helping to demystify the process, right? Often it can seem very overwhelming, like, what do I do, and, just sort of his generosity as a colleague and sort of explaining what to expect, can sort of help, make the navigation a little less fraught. So, so thank you.
Thanks so much, Lucia.
Well, in the last couple of minutes here, we did have one. We'll take one more final question that came in, because I think it related to what Pete was just talking about, but it is also a good one. Given series overarching purposes, what new steps does the press plan to take to promote series titles that were not done before?
Well, I mean, the ideal situation is, we'd love to expand our marketing budget. We have a very, very dedicated and professional marketing team. And we have as we do with every other department, a finite budget. So we're not buying full page ads in the print New York Times these days, if ever. It wasn't part of that, but we are promoting this series at conferences. We are promoting this series in larger conference venues, like, say, the American Historical Association, the Organization of American, the OAH, the Organization of American Historians, and so forth. So other professional organizations, traditional academic outlets. We have been taking, we recently took out a full page ad. I was delighted to see, as I was home just reading casually, in The Nation, and it had a whole slew of our books. So some mainstream, wonderful, periodicals that cover history, politics, and culture. So I think a judicious marketing and publicity strategy is always key for any book and any topic. And those same strategies are going to be applied to the series as well.
Great, thank you all so much. That's all the questions we have.
Great. Well, thank you for having us. I appreciate it. And please reach out with any questions.
Take
Thank you
care,
so much.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Great.